Have you ever felt that God was no longer paying attention to all the terrible things going on in the world? When you see the news, it can be easier to doubt whether God is watching anymore. How could the world be going the way it is? How could God allow so much pain and suffering to take place? How could He allow all this death, violence, and war? How could God allow humans to depart so far from His word? How could He allow His word and commandments to be mocked as they are today? Does He not care anymore? Has He given up? Perhaps the circumstances in your own life have caused you to question whether God has forgotten or hidden His face from you. Perhaps you are facing persecution or an insurmountable challenge, and it just feels like God is not there for you. If you've had thoughts like these, you are not alone. In fact, these are the thoughts that the Psalmist contended with in Psalms 9 and 10. Hi everyone, welcome back to Visual Scriptures. For those who might be new to this channel, my name is Mark. On this channel, I combine my love for God and filmmaking together to share His word with others. Over the last few videos, we have been exploring the book of Psalms, deconstructing the individual Psalms and seeing how they can apply to our lives today. In doing so, we have been looking at the deeper meanings that we can often miss in our 21st century perspectives. Today we are going to be having a look at two Psalms, Psalms 9 and 10. Why two Psalms, you might be asking? Well, some believe that these two Psalms were originally one Psalm due to their similar themes, acoustic pattern, and the fact that Psalm 10, unlike the other Psalms in its section, lacks a title. Now, we'll get back to Psalm 9's title later on in this video. Regardless of whether it is true that these two Psalms were one or not, the fact is that both of these Psalms explore the topic of God's judgment and justice, and how sometimes it can feel that evil prevails in this world. Psalm chapter 9 verse 13. Lord, see how my enemies persecute me. Have mercy and lift me up from the gates of death. Psalm chapter 10 verses 1 to 6 and 11. Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? In his arrogance, the wicked man hunts down the weak, who are caught in the schemes he devises. He boasts about the cravings of his heart. He blesses the greedy and reviles the Lord. He says to himself, God will never notice. He covers his face and never sees. Psalm chapter 10 verse 13. Why does the wicked man revile God? Why does he say to himself, He won't call me to account? The psalmist struggles with the thought of the evil having their way in this world. It can be easy to feel this way when you watch the news or see what takes place in your own life. We live in a broken world, and because of this, it can be easy to lose faith in God. In fact, that is an argument many atheists make. But that's not the conclusion the psalmist makes in these psalms, nor does he let these negative thoughts overtake him to the point where he loses faith in God. Quite the opposite. David praises God and reaffirms his faith. In fact, David begins Psalm 9 with praise, and that's an important point which we'll get to shortly. Before he utters any complaints or notes any worries or even just his circumstances, David proclaims, I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing the praises of your name, O Most High. And in his praise, David notes that God is a righteous judge, a judge that does not simply ignore his people or what's going on in the world. The Lord reigns forever. He has established his throne for judgment. He rules the world in righteousness and judges the people with equity. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. He does not ignore the cries of the afflicted. God will never forget the needy. The hopes of the afflicted will never perish. And throughout these two Psalms, David assuredly notes that God will ultimately rise and judge the nations in evil, striking them with terror and calling them to account for their wickedness. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. The nations will perish from his land. You have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. Endless ruin has overtaken my enemies. You have uprooted their cities. Even the memory of them has perished. Note how this is contrasted with the language of verse 18. But God will never forget the needy. The hope of the afflicted will never perish. There are so many other verses like this in these two Psalms. Now, let's return back to the title of Psalm 9, because I think this is very interesting. The title of Psalm 9 is For the Director of Music, to the tune of The Death of the Son, a Psalm of David. According to some Jewish and Christian thought, this title refers to David's victory over Goliath in Samuel chapter 17. If you recall the story from Samuel chapter 17, you might recall that the Israelites and Philistines were gathering to fight each other in battle, when a challenge was issued. Instead of everyone fighting, each side would choose one champion to represent their nation. The champions would battle to the death, and the losing nation would serve the winning nation. There was a lot riding on this battle. The Philistines had their champion chosen immediately, the giant Goliath, a warrior from youth, a 3-meter or 9.9 foot man whose armor weighed 58 kilograms or 125 pounds. Goliath was huge. He shouted out and mocked the Israelites, God's people. What was Israel's response? They were terrified at the sight of him. They lost hope that God would deliver them. But David, a young man who was not even a member of the Israelite army, was confused by everyone's fear. Instead, he volunteered to fight Goliath, noting that God would protect him. And that he did. David defeated Goliath with just a sling and stone. With that context in mind, where does that leave us with this psalm? Well, David teaches us in this psalm that while on this earth it may appear that at times the wicked do what they like and get away with it, and our problems may appear giant like Goliath, that is not how things will end. In the end, God will rise and judge, and he will bring deliverance to his people in one way or another, according to his purpose. In fact, in the book of Jeremiah chapter 12, the prophet Jeremiah made a similar complaint to God, asking, "Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why do all who are treacherous thrive?" God responded to Jeremiah directly, reassuring him that God had not forgotten about his people and that the time would come when he would judge. In light of this, our response should not be to lose faith or to be fearful when something happens to us, or we face a giant problem, or we see something terrible happen in this world. No, instead, we need to follow David's footsteps in this psalm and in his battle with Goliath. We can do this in 3 ways. Firstly, just like David began Psalm 9, we should always praise God before anything else. Despite our circumstances, praise should always be on our lips. This can be hard, I know. How often do you pray and the first words on your lips are, "Lord, please do this," or "Lord, why is this happening to me?" But if you truly have faith in God and believe what these 2 psalms are saying, then praise ought to come first. Secondly, we should reaffirm our faith in God as a righteous judge. He knows better than us, and he knows what is best for everyone in this world. Trust him to deliver you, your loved ones, and all his people around the world. We may not understand why things are the way they are, but we should trust that God has everything under his control. And lastly, we should be bold against any challenges we face and take them on with the faith that God will protect and provide for us, just like he did with David in his battle against Goliath. And so we shouldn't hide away in this world knowing that there's so much evil around us, but rather we should rise up in faith. I think that chapter 9 verse 10 summarizes the lesson of these two psalms perfectly. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. Well, that's it from me today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please consider hitting that like button and sharing it with someone you think may need it. Please also consider subscribing for more videos on the Psalms and how they can apply to our lives today. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, stay safe and keep that faith. Bye.